It all began with a cannonball. 1521, Pamplona, the great siege in which St. Ignatius, in all of his stubborn foolishness, decided, we'll fight anyway. And in his sort of bravery, won the hearts and minds of many other people, and it also made him a little shorter on one leg as he received that sort of famous wound in which the cannonball tore open one leg, and I won't go into the gruesome detail, even though there's a part of my, seventh grade self that definitely wants to. But that sense in which a sort of seemingly unconnected moment could transform so many different things in the future. I mean, it wasn't as though Ignatius got hit with a cannonball and boom, immediately he was destined to become a saint, right? He still had his journey that sort of moved through and had to go through these movements. And even early on in his convalescence, one could argue that he still really wasn't transformed. I mean, the first thing he did after he sort of escaped the throes of death was look and realize that because of the way the bones were healing, he didn't like it, and he didn't think he'd look very good in the fashionable pants at that time, decided to have a surgeon to come back in and make it better. Again, this is 16th century medicine, mind you, right? So we are talking about kind of an absurd request. Not just absurd because it was very much about his sort of personal vanity, but the risks and the consequences involved, right? Would he actually gain that much just to have a surgeon come in and saw off a little bit more bone? This is the great saint that we celebrate today, whose ideas and visions and dreams have to be tempered over time through prayer and through correction, whether that's from the community or his own experience of God speaking to him. And thanks be to God, that fills me with a whole lot of consolation, because as I begin my journey as pastor here at St. Thomas More, I can be assured that no matter what I come up with in terms of my ideas for what's supposed to happen at St. Thomas More, I'm not in charge, but God is. And God will take even my craziest ideas and somehow make them work. So let's use Ignatius as sort of a foil for what I hope to see as part of our vision moving forward at St. Thomas More. The first sort of foolish moment in Ignatius's life, he gives the reins over to a donkey, right? So in a moment of sort of trying to decide whether or not he wants to sort of defend Mary's honor by actually fighting for her on the road to Manresa, he sort of encounters a Moor who is not necessarily speaking of Mary in the same theological virtues that Ignatius would choose to use. And in a moment he says, well, if the donkey goes and follows the Moor, we're going to have a fight. If the donkey goes another direction, I'll follow that and let the incident go. Again, Ignatius in his foolishness was able to sort of recognize, even in a very indirect way, God's will be better than his. And thanks be to God for us that God's will was to turn the donkey to the left and not to follow the Moor, right? So we have that kind of moment of foolishness. And maybe my own journey begins with my own sense of foolishness in when I entered the Society of Jesus. Now, many of you probably know this, but if you don't, I love to dance. I swing dance quite well. It's one of my passions. Before I entered the Society of Jesus, I used to teach people how to swing dance. And if you put a song on that's from the big band era, you can get me kind of moving pretty quickly without a whole lot of invitation. And if you get me moving long enough, I might even flip someone in a swing dance move, like a hip flip. It's one of my favorite stunts. It's exciting, it's fresh. And the foolish RJ, as he enters the Society of Jesus, thinks, that's it. That's it. I'll never be able to dance again. They'll never let me dance ever again. I'm grateful that in this case, I happen to be the donkey in this particular situation of God sort of gently nudging and saying, don't be silly. I mean, it was when I was ordained a deacon teaching 125 people in the church basement in Berkeley, California, where I was studying theology at the time, realizing that I'm in the Bay Area, one of the most sort of thriving and exciting parts of this country, and 125 people wanted to be in a church basement learning how to swing dance from a deacon. Okay, God has other plans. So, next moment. Ignatius, as he gains his companions over time, eventually their idea is that they want to go and be missionaries in Jerusalem. They want to go to the far reaches and do good work there, but ultimately through the wars that were going on, through an event of just bad timing and the weather, and the fact that there was a plague in Rome actually meant that Ignatius gets stuck in Rome, and suddenly he reorients and changes how he desires to serve God. His great plan suddenly shifted because of circumstance. So what's my great plan? Honestly, I don't think it's a bad one, but I share it in this context because I hold it lightly. In 6 years, I'd like St. Thomas More to be the most environmentally friendly parish in the Archdiocese. What does that look like? That looks like finding ways to generate our own energy through solar energy, finding ways to reclaim a lot of the rainwater that falls on our hard concrete, finding ways to truly follow in the path of our great Pope, Pope Francis and Laudato Si, to truly say that how do we put our best foot forward to be a great parish that leads in the world of good environmental sustainability and being good stewards of our environment. It's a good idea, but I recognize that that's going to have to change over 6 years. There are a lot of hurdles and a lot of things that need to happen to make that a reality. But the truth is, again, even if this idea never comes to fruition, the very fact that God is in charge and holds this idea and says, all right, Father RJ made this public. He said that out loud. I can barely believe it myself. But we will take that. We will offer it to God and allow God to take that in a beautiful way and bring that forward. Or maybe in the same vein of sort of being justicely oriented, I want us to be a leader of anti-racism relationships and sort of finding ways to go out and really become something unique. Now the problem with this idea is I don't even know what that end goal looks like. And I will absolutely need people in this community to help walk with us to sort of see what that end goal might look like. I envision that it has something of a relationship, a sister relationship with St. Peter Claver, which is already in the works, but I imagine that it's going to need to do so much more. And again, whatever that is, that desire being named will be transformed and used by God. And maybe that's the most important thing that we learn from St. Ignatius as we look through all of the examples of sort of the foolish ways that he had a particular idea only to be transformed. Right? Is he names them. He's not afraid to have them changed, but that essential idea that we can claim our ideas, we can claim our desires, and by announcing them, by bringing them forward, we allow ourselves to be transformed in that beautiful way. I mean, not every idea comes to fruition. I mean, Ignatius at another point thought, okay, I have to go back and get another master's, right? And he goes to school, and eventually he falls in a river because he's so sort of torn apart about not being a good student. When it finally hits him, he admits this in his own autobiography. He's like, falling in that river and being covered with mud was the best thing that could happen to me, to recognize that it was my pride that made me want to sort of be this particular person, to have this particular degree or this particular moment. But even being able to name that and to sort of recognize that God will change and take our great ideas and mold them, allow us to sort of be free with them. I mean, this idea that we hear in today's gospel saying that we have to hate our father, our mother, our siblings, and even our own lives in order to be disciples of Christ, I think if we take that to sort of its illogical conclusion, right, we kind of say, well, then we can't love anything, right? And nothing could be further from the truth. But we hold all of our loves lightly, as though we are always constantly in a position of offering our heart, our loves, and our desires to God. We don't possess them. We don't wrap our fingers around them and cling to them tightly because they are our ideas or they're the best thing to happen. Right? I mean, right now, St. Thomas More is known for being a welcoming parish, and I hope that only continues to grow. But however we do that, if we hold on to that tightly, we become sort of entrenched in our way of doing things. But if we hold it as an offering to God, always our hearts are oriented to that divine relationship. And whatever it means to be welcoming will continue to be dynamic, changing and shifting. We can be free to meet the needs of the world wherever that happens to be, so that when we say we are welcoming because we desire to welcome all people to God and to Christ. Or this sense of being involved in this parish. And this is a real area that I'd love to see us grow in. How do we make it easy for all of us to participate in bringing about a couple of these ideas that I've just simply mentioned? Whether that's bringing about sort of an ecologically sustainable parish, generating energy and other things. Maybe there are things I haven't even thought of that'll be brought about because you participate. And I want you to hold me to that. I want you to say, Father RJ, you wanted us to get involved, but you haven't made it easy yet. Challenge me. Keep me honest so that I can always remember it is the gift of being able to serve that truly gives me joy. And I mean that, my friends. That the opportunity to serve you is one of the coolest things I've ever been able to do as a Jesuit, as a priest, in my entire life. And now to be able to do that as your pastor, what an incredible gift. And I do not take it lightly. But I do intend to hold it in that likeness, offering to God, offering to say thank you, because it is through this relationship of service that I'm able to see God even more clearly. It's through my relationship with you all that I get to see God in the person, in flesh, because each of you carry a spark of the divine, a spark of God as we understand who it is that we are called to serve. And finally, perhaps the funniest thing of Ignatius is the last thing that he ever wanted, and he was adamant he'd never be, was the leader of this sort of new organization called the Society of Jesus. He definitely did not want it named after him, right? We don't call ourselves Ignatian like as though we were, like the way that Franciscans or Dominicans are sort of sub-named. But rather, he sort of wanted to sort of fade into the background and just sort of relax. God had other plans. Now, I don't know what that means for me in my life, but my idea of leadership is ill-formed, not because I was not given an amazing mentor in Father Warren. It is ill-formed because it is not yet complete. It is ill-formed because it is not yet my own. And so this is an ask I have of each of you. Help me to become a good pastor. I'm asking you to be my teachers, my mentors, my advisors, the people who will help me to be able to claim that at the end of 6 years, I will become a good pastor, not because of my innate gifts or talents, but because of the amazing generosity of this community. And so the last ask is of you. Help me to hold this lightly, to remember that this is a ministry of service, and to learn from you every day.